Moving on to part 3 of chapter 5, we're going to look at the protective coat and just go through the different components. So we'll start here on the left. You have the wristlets. Most of the turnout coats that you have will have a wristlet. You slide your hand through, slide your thumb into the wristlet opening. It is a little bit more difficult when you put on your structured gloves when you have that that inside, but you don't want to not have that, right? That's part of a system to keep you from getting burned. Here, the closure system. So this is a zipper closure system with a Velcro. You'll also see a zipper with clasp system, and then you'll also see a button with a clasp system, right? So there's several different. This is just one example. You have the collar that comes across. So remember, you want to put your flash hood in, zip up your coat, fasten it over, and then put your collar on as your flash hood is in there. So you have the reflective trim. That's pretty standard. Comes from the manufacturer. You might even have your name in that reflective trim. And then you have a drag rescue device, which is just basically it's a strap that folds into your turnout coat. And when that strap folds into your turnout coat, you can pull that out for rescue. Okay. So that's the turnout coat there. The pants, they're really composed the same way. They have the same layers, similar closure system. Suspenders are up to you. This is what I was talking about with the big bulky pockets. And you'll see some people will put some additional pockets or additional like pouches on there so that they don't have their gear loosely inside these larger pockets. Also, one thing you'll see is there'll be like a tool organizer that you can buy on aftermarket to slide into your pocket, and it'll have a section for a pair of pliers, screwdrivers, or whatever that you might keep in there. So people keep different things in their turnout pants and coat pockets. Keep in mind that when you do have your turnout coat on and you have your SCBA on, and it's buckled up and it's buckled up here in front with the waist straps and the arm straps, these pockets may be a little bit easier to get to, and that's why some people will sew some additional pockets on their pants. These pockets may be a little bit easier to get to than the pockets that you have on your coat. So again, the same materials and closure system as the protective coats. Reinforcement in high compression areas. So you have some reinforcement in the knees, right? Because typically we're going to be crawling quite a bit. The cargo or patch pockets, I already talked about those. Heavy duty suspenders. I don't personally wear suspenders. I wear a belt, an outside belt that I use to tighten up my pants after I put them on. So I've chosen to do that in lieu of suspenders. It's really up to you. I don't like the pull on my shoulders with suspenders. And then again, the manufacturer is going to put in a reflective trim on the pants. So your department is going to design and buy whichever turnouts they want to buy, and then each person's going to get theirs, and then you may have your name or initials. Ours on the very back where the belt goes at the waist and the back have our initials on them. So some have the initials on the pockets, and it's just extra identification. Protective gloves. So these, you're going to lose a lot of dexterity, okay, and feeling, right? So when you start tying knots, and using tools, you're really going to find out that you need to put those gloves on and practice doing that, okay? So what are the gloves designed to do? They're designed to protect from heat, steam, or cold penetration, resist cuts, punctures, and liquid absorption, must allow dexterity, feeling, and grasping, and that, is something that you're going to really have to get used to. And then cover the wristlets to form a complete seal. So as these come in, they come through, they come over your hands, and then you have that wristlet where your thumb goes through, and then the jacket comes over the glove. And that's how it makes it a complete seal. All right, and they must be NFPA compliant. So let's go back to gloves. Actually, I don't need to go back to the picture, but just so you know, sometimes people will wear work gloves in lieu of leather gloves. There are leather gloves that we'll wear, and those we'll wear as work gloves. I get some of the work gloves that you find at Home Depot that have a little bit of the extra padding on the knuckles and the fingers. Those things work great. Here's what I will caution you. Some people will use those for ventilation, and you will get burns if you have fire coming through your ventilation hole. All right. So those are not approved for structure firefighting, and they're not approved for ventilation. So, but you can use them when you're doing some other things like auto extrication, all right, or ropes and knots, or raising and lowering systems. Okay, moving on to footwear, protective footwear. So obviously, they're designed to protect from puncture and crushing wounds. So you're going to have a steel toe in those, and a steel shank or a steel plate. They are also designed to prevent scalding water or contaminated liquids and burns. Leather boots versus rubber boots. I prefer the leather. They're much more comfortable. They're much more durable. They last longer. Here's the thing with rubber boots. Rubber boots we use in hazmat. So if we have a hazmat call where you're going to have some kind of contaminants, especially a contaminated liquid, and you wear your leather boots, that may be the last time you see them. So for me, I prefer the leather boots. I'm assigned to a hazardous materials unit, so I also have a pair of rubber boots. Our department gave us rubber boots. That's what they issue. So you have to purchase your own leather boots in our department, and they're much more expensive. So that's just an additional cost that you would incur, but well worth it in my opinion. Okay, so we look at the boot construction. You have loops at the top. Some do, some don't. Most of the rubber boots do. You have a foam cushioning, waterproof rubber, or water resistant leather. That's the thing, right? So leather is going to absorb some of that water. Some of the boots will have a reflective material. You're not going to find too much reflective material with the leather boots. You get a moisture barrier in there, a rubber cap or a leather cap, steel toe, steel shank. Like I said, that provides like puncture resistant. You got your heel stabilizer in there, and then you got the sole of the boot, which should be chemical resistant. So insoles, we'll talk a little bit about insoles. I prefer to purchase my own insoles and put them in for a little bit of extra padding. It's really up to you what you want to do. All right. So you'll figure it out as you go. And talk real quick about the personal alert safety systems. So it's an alarm. So it's emitted to alert personnel that firefighter is in danger. So it's activated when person remains motionless for 30 seconds or when the firefighter pushes an emergency button. Some models may activate when the temperature exceeds a preset limit. I don't think that we have that with the integrated pass system into our SCBA, but it has to be at least 95 decibels and go off continuously for 1 hour. Okay, so what we'll do is if you remain motionless, it's going to go off on its own. If you call a mayday, right? A mayday is something that you would use for a trap. If you're trapped, if you're lost, or if you're injured and no one's around you, you would call a mayday on your radio. And in an ideal situation, the person that picks up the mayday and starts running the mayday, because it becomes what we call an incident within an incident, will tell you to set off your alarm device, and you'll do that by pushing a button. So you will know your breathing apparatus inside and out, and you will know where the button is to activate your alarm. Okay. So these are very useful in total darkness, dense smoke, confined spaces. And there are going to be some advances with Bluetooth, and there'll be some advances probably with GPS, over the next 10 years. So we'll see how that goes with communication through the SCBAs, right? You already have the integrated pass system and an integrated pass system with a built-in GPS. So that assists with locating, right? So that's possible. I see that being very possible in the near future. This is a very old style pass on the right. That's what we had when I first started. And now you see on the left, they're integrated into the Scott Air Packs. So you might not use a Scott Air Pack. I know there's a couple departments that don't necessarily use Scott air packs. Most will. That's all I've used. I've worked for 3 different departments, and that's all we've used. But this pass system is what we used when I first got hired, and now it's integrated. So I don't think you're going to see too many standalone now, particularly not in like the Orange County, LA area, Riverside, San Bernardino, right? The Southern California area, you're not going to see that. Northern California, you're not going to see that. Perhaps if you go to the Midwest or East, you might, but you're not gonna see that. But these are activated automatically or manually. The modes you have off, alarm, sensing, and pre-alarm. Pre-alarm is some chirping that'll take place if you're motionless for too long, and you can either shake or hit this button here, the yellow button there. You can shake or you can hit that yellow button, and that will stop that pre-alarm. All right. The emergency button would be that red button there. All right. So that is that's the pass system there. It's awesome now that it's integrated because once you turn your air on, that thing fires up. So you don't have to go through an additional step of turning off the standalone. So hearing protection. We wear hearing protection pretty much when we're on our apparatus and we're communicating. Sometimes if you're smart, you'll wear hearing protection when you're doing ventilation, when you're running tools. That is definitely a good thing. Very rarely do we wear like earmuff type hearing protection. It's mostly just when we're communicating and we're on our apparatus. So hopefully that changes because most of us end up with some kind of hearing loss by the end of our career. Situations that require hearing protection, riding on an apparatus where noise exceeds the maximum exposure levels. That's any apparatus that you're on, anytime that the siren is going, operating power tools, the apparatus pump, and the generators. That's probably where we are the worst at doing it. And also during pass device tests. Yeah, we're probably these two are pretty bad at doing it. I would say in general, we're pretty bad at doing it then. So we'll see what kind of changes are made and policy type changes are made requiring it. Hearing protection may be dangerous or impractical in some situations. Okay, so just because you want to be aware of your surroundings and where you're at. Wildland PPE. As you can see, wildland's a little bit different. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as single layer. The boots are a bit different because they're made for the wildland. And so they're constructed, like a hiking type boot because of the different terrains they're constructed for that terrain. Pants are very similar. And then you will see either this type of wildland uniform, which they'll call it yellow and greens. A lot of times this is a Forest Service uniform. But this is a button-up shirt, whereas we have a jacket and then we have blue pants that look like these pants here. We have the blue tactical pants there. This is a Fireline pack, and then radio communications here. They got a lightweight helmet, goggles, and then the shroud. And you can see they each have eye protection. In the wildland setting, you'll see a lot of people will wear leather work gloves. I choose those gloves from Home Depot. Those type work gloves, like mechanic type work gloves. They work for me. It's way better. I like the comfort. I think that the feel of those are much better. So I like that. Right. So we covered that: gloves, goggles, jackets or shirts, trousers, and then long sleeve t-shirts underneath. Or a one-piece jumpsuit. Rarely are you going to see the one-piece jumpsuit. I have not seen that at all. Right. So you have the helmet, face and neck shrouds, footwear, fire shelter, load carrying or load bearing equipment, respiratory protection. You're going to see very little respiratory protection in the wildland unless you're on like an engine out there. But if you're on a hand crew, you're going to see very little respiratory protection. As far as chainsaw protection, so that's a specialty if you're out and you're using a chainsaw. If you're a sawyer out there in a wildland setting, you're going to have some equipment that is going to use to protect against kickback from the chainsaw. Water, you're going to want to make sure that you carry a lot of water there. And here's the problem: is in the wildland setting, sometimes you're stuck